At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy lies a single force: the will to power. It is often misunderstood as a hunger for domination, a lust for control, a thirst to rule. But Nietzsche meant something deeper. The will to power is the drive that moves all life. It is the force that pushes a seed to break through the soil, a predator to sharpen its claws, a human being to rise, to create, to endure. For Nietzsche, this was not optional. It is the essence of life itself, and those who master it become unstoppable.
Welcome to the Midnight Mind. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here, and give the video a like while you're at it. It really helps the channel. You know what time it is? It's midnight. It's time to enter the mind of Nietzsche.
Nietzsche described the will to power as the fundamental drive behind all living things. It is not just the desire to survive. Survival, he argued, is only a means to something greater. The true force is expansion, growth, creation, overcoming. Every living thing strives not just to exist, but to assert itself, to shape its environment, to grow stronger. For Nietzsche, this was the truth beneath morality, culture, and social rules. People often claim to live for virtue, for community, for God, for progress. But beneath these masks, he saw the same basic drive: the will to power. Every act of ambition, every struggle for recognition, every attempt to rise above circumstance reveals this will at work. The will to power is not cruelty. It is not mere conquest. It is creation. Nietzsche admired artists because they embody this drive. The artist transforms chaos into beauty. Out of raw material, they create form, structure, vision. This is the will to power in action. He admired philosophers for the same reason. The philosopher takes confusion and shapes it into clarity. He imposes order on thought, bends ideas into systems, creates worlds of meaning. Again, the will to power. Even in suffering, Nietzsche saw this force at work. When hardship arrives, the weak collapse, but the strong use it as resistance. They bend suffering into endurance, turn wounds into wisdom, transform pain into strength. This transformation is the will to power expressed at its highest level. The ability not only to survive suffering, but to shape it into fuel. Nietzsche believed that misunderstanding this will leads to weakness. Most people shrink their lives down to safety, convinced survival is the highest goal. But survival is never enough. Those who only survive remain trapped in mediocrity. Those who express the will to power rise beyond mere existence and enter the realm of greatness. This is why Nietzsche rejected the idea of morality as obedience. Traditional morality, he argued, was designed to suppress the will to power. It taught people to obey, to feel guilt, to fear their own strength. Nietzsche called this slave morality, the values of the herd that keep individuals weak and compliant. But the higher individual creates his own values. He does not suppress his will, he expresses it. He lives not by obedience, but by creation. This is what Nietzsche meant by Übermensch, the one who rises above the herd and embodies the will to power as self-mastery and self-creation. The will to power also explains why greatness unsettles people. Most live with narrow boundaries. They suppress their will, obey rules, and remain safe. When they encounter someone who lives expansively, who asserts themselves without apology, they feel exposed. They sense the difference. This is why strong minds and strong spirits provoke fear as well as admiration. Nietzsche saw this in history. Every figure who left a mark, the artist, the thinker, the leader, carried an excess of will. They refused to remain ordinary. They shaped life according to their vision. Whether loved or hated, they could not be ignored. This, to Nietzsche, was the proof of the will to power expressed fully. At its core, the will to power is not about others at all. It is not about ruling the herd. It is about ruling yourself. It is the inner drive to grow, to overcome, to transform. The external effects, influence, respect, fear, come naturally as a result. But the essence is inward. A mind that has mastered its will carries authority without demanding it. Nietzsche's diagnosis is simple. Life is will. The only question is whether you suppress it or express it. To suppress it is to live small, to bend under the weight of the herd. To express it is to rise, to create, to become who you are. This is the path of strength. This is the philosophy of the will to power. Nietzsche believed that the will to power is not abstract philosophy. It is the pulse of life itself, and every person expresses it, whether consciously or unconsciously. The difference between the herd and the higher individual lies in mastery. The herd suppresses or misuses this will. The higher individual learns to master it and direct it toward growth. The first step in mastering the will to power is awareness. Most people live as if their desires, habits, and fears simply happen to them. They believe they are controlled by circumstance, shaped by upbringing, or dictated by society. Nietzsche insisted that beneath all of this lies choice. The choice of what you do with the will that drives you. The strong individual sees this clearly and refuses to live passively. Consider ambition. For most, ambition is shallow. A hunger for approval, status, or security. These are herd ambitions, rooted in fear and imitation. But when ambition is aligned with the will to power, it becomes deeper. It becomes a drive not for applause, but for mastery. The individual no longer seeks to be recognized by others. He seeks to overcome himself. This distinction is crucial. The herd uses its will to chase acceptance. The higher individual uses it to build strength. This is the difference between living for the world's approval and living for one's own becoming. Nietzsche taught that the will to power must be aimed inward first. Only then can it radiate outward. Mastery of the will to power also requires struggle. Nietzsche never promised ease. He believed that strength is proven only through resistance. Without resistance, the will stagnates. With resistance, it sharpens. This is why he praised hardship, solitude, and suffering. They are not obstacles but opportunities. Each struggle forces the will to grow. Each hardship is training for mastery. The herd flees struggle. They interpret hardship as unfairness, as misfortune. They look for comfort to numb it. The higher individual accepts it as part of the path. He sees in every difficulty a chance to expand. Where others retreat, he advances. This willingness to embrace struggle is what makes his will terrifying to the herd. Nietzsche also spoke of the danger of resentment. When the will is suppressed, it turns bitter. People who feel powerless often cling to resentment, blaming others for their weakness, seeking revenge instead of growth. Nietzsche called this poison. It corrodes the spirit and chains the will to smallness. Mastering the will to power means refusing resentment. Instead of blaming, you take responsibility. Instead of waiting for rescue, you rise. This mastery extends to creation. Nietzsche believed that the highest expression of the will to power is the act of creating values. The herd inherits morality from tradition, obeys rules without question, and lives according to what others have already built. The higher individual creates his own values. He asks, what do I believe is worth living for? What principles will I live by? In answering these questions, he becomes the author of his life. The act of creation is terrifying to the herd because it breaks their illusion of certainty. They want rules to be fixed, values to be eternal, truths to be unquestionable. But Nietzsche argued that all values are human creations. The higher individual embraces this and creates consciously. He becomes his own lawgiver, shaping life according to his will. Mastering the will to power also means cultivating presence. When you have directed your will inward, overcoming fear, building strength, creating values, You carry yourself differently. You no longer need to demand recognition. You no longer need to force influence. Authority radiates naturally from self-mastery. Others sense it immediately. They may not understand it, but they feel it. This presence unsettles because it cannot be controlled. Most people are guided by fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of loss. But the individual who has mastered his will no longer bends to these fears. He acts with clarity, not hesitation. He carries himself with certainty, not apology. This is the living embodiment of the will to power. Nietzsche warned that this path is rare. Most will never attempt it. They will live small lives, shaped by fear and comfort. But for those who do attempt it, the rewards are immense. They experience freedom at a level the herd cannot imagine. They live not as followers, but as creators. Not as imitators, but as originals. This mastery is not about conquering others, but conquering yourself. Nietzsche saw self-mastery as the greatest victory. The herd measures strength in numbers, wealth, or status. The higher individual measures strength in discipline, endurance, and independence. He is free because he has mastered his will. To apply Nietzsche's philosophy of the will to power in life means shifting your relationship to struggle, to values, and to fear. Struggle becomes training, not misfortune. Values become creations, not commandments. Fear becomes a signal, not a master. With each step, you direct your will more consciously. With each step, you rise above the herd. The ultimate mark of mastery is not domination, but creation. When you shape your life intentionally, when you create meaning instead of borrowing it, when you use suffering as fuel and independence as law, you embody the will to power. This embodiment is greatness itself. The will to power is more than a principle to understand. It is a way of living. To embody it means to step into life as if it were raw material waiting to be shaped. Nietzsche didn't see existence as something given, fixed, or finished. He saw it as clay in the hands of those strong enough to mold it. The herd drifts. They accept the paths laid before them. They settle into routines others designed, into beliefs others handed down. Their lives echo a script written long before they were born. Nietzsche challenged us to burn the script and write our own. Living the will to power begins with courage. Courage to stand apart, to risk misunderstanding, to carry the weight of your own decisions. Few people dare to stand alone, because it is easier to be carried by the crowd. But strength is found in solitude. In solitude, you confront yourself. In solitude, you hear your own voice clearly for the first time. The herd drowns in noise. The strong cultivate silence. With courage comes responsibility. Nietzsche insisted that greatness is not granted, it is claimed. To claim it, you must take responsibility for everything in your life, not only your actions, but your interpretations. The weak see themselves as victims of circumstance. The strong reinterpret circumstance as fuel. To them, every setback is material to work with. Every loss is a lesson. Every hardship is a forge. This act of taking ownership transforms suffering into strength. But Nietzsche pushed further. Living the will to power means loving life in its entirety. He used the idea of eternal recurrence, the thought experiment of living the same life again and again for eternity, as a test. Could you embrace your life so fully that you would choose to live it endlessly? If your answer is no, then something must change. The higher individual seeks to live in such a way that even eternal repetition would be welcome. This radical love of life is the deepest expression of strength. Greatness in Nietzsche's vision is not measured in recognition or legacy. It's measured in intensity of being. The herd seeks comfort. The strong seek depth. To live fully is to throw yourself into life without hesitation, to embrace danger, uncertainty, and creation with open arms. Comfort numbs. Danger awakens. Presence is the final mark of the will to power. When someone has mastered their will, when they live courageously, take responsibility, and love life fiercely, their very being carries weight. They walk into a room and alter the atmosphere without speaking. Their eyes show clarity. Their voice carries authority. Their silence feels stronger than most people's noise. This is presence. Presence does not need validation. It does not beg for approval. It does not shrink under judgment. Presence is grounded, unwavering. It is the natural gravity of a spirit that has conquered itself. Nietzsche admired those rare figures in history whose presence alone commanded respect, not because of titles or position, but because of the undeniable strength of their will. Living the will to power also means recognizing the limits of imitation. The herd copies. They look to heroes and idols, hoping to borrow greatness. But imitation is always a shadow. Nietzsche urged us to go further, to create. Creation is the act of giving form to your will, whether in art, in work, in relationships, or in life itself. When you create, you leave the safety of the known and step into risk. But in risk lies power. This is why Nietzsche admired the figure of the artist, the philosopher, the free spirit. Not because they lived easy lives, but because they risked everything to bring their inner vision into reality. Each creation is an act of defiance against nothingness. Each creation says, I will not be erased. I will shape this world. To live this way is to frighten those who cling to certainty. The herd does not understand someone who refuses to bow to convention. They feel unsettled by the presence of someone who does not apologize for existing fully. Nietzsche would say this is the natural result of strength. When you embody the will to power, your very existence becomes a challenge to mediocrity. But remember, Nietzsche didn't celebrate cruelty or domination for their own sake. The will to power is not about crushing others. It's about expansion, about becoming more than you were yesterday. The strongest individuals may never rule nations, but they rule themselves absolutely. Their victory is internal, and from it flows an influence that cannot be faked. So, how do you live the will to power today? Begin by confronting your fears. Ask yourself what you avoid, what you hide from, what you excuse. Then step toward it. Resistance is where strength grows. Next, take radical responsibility. Refuse to hand your fate to others. Claim it. Reinterpret setbacks as training. Then create. Don't wait for permission. Don't imitate endlessly. Choose what you believe is worth building and shape it with your own hands. Over time, this path transforms you. Fear loses its grip. Resentment dissolves. Comfort loses its seduction. You live sharper, deeper, more awake. And in this state, others will feel your presence. Some will respect you. Some will fear you. Some will despise you. But none will be able to ignore you. This is Nietzsche's secret of greatness. Not in titles, not in wealth, not in the applause of the many. Greatness is living so fiercely that life itself bends to your will. Greatness is presence that speaks louder than words. Greatness is strength that terrifies not because it harms, but because it refuses to be broken. That is the will to power lived. And that is what it means to embody Nietzsche's philosophy of strength.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Midnight Mind. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button for me. I really would appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.